I started paying attention after the third token. Every little silver disc I found bore the same tiny lightning bolt slicing clean through a perfect circle. Then came the 10th, then the 20th. Just as I questioned whether I was losing my mind in this cookie-cutter paradise, a certified letter from the HOA attorneys landed in my mailbox accusing me of stealing founder assets from the Community Reserve Trust. An anonymous tip to my HR department followed, claiming I was laundering dirty money through neighborhood accounts. My name is Stella Hughes. I'm 34. And for the last decade, I believe the world runs on spreadsheets. If you just track the numbers, chaos stays in its lane. I'm a financial controls analyst at a mid-sized firm outside Chicago. My job is staring at rows of data that look like gray static to everyone else and spotting the single red flag that doesn't belong. I find rounding errors that scream embezzlement. I catch duplicate invoices that scream incompetence. I am very good at finding things that desperately do not want to be found. So when Sunnyvale Estates started leaving me breadcrumbs, I didn't mistake them for neighborly goodwill. It started 10 days ago at the community mailbox kiosk. I was grabbing my usual stack of junk mail and the HOA newsletter when my fingers brushed something cold and heavy at the bottom of the slot. I pulled out a silver medallion the size of a silver dollar. No ridges like real currency. Roosevelt's face was gone. In its place, dead center, was that industrial lightning bolt cutting through a circle. The back was blank. I figured it was some leftover promotional token from the developer's old marketing campaign that got mixed into the mail system. I dropped it into my purse and forgot about it. That was mistake number one. You do not forget an anomaly. You investigate it. 2 days later, I was backing my Honda out of my driveway on Maple Lane when I dropped my keys on the concrete. As I crouched down, right there on the white painted line of my own parking spot sat an identical medallion. Same weight, same silver sheen, same lightning bolt. I looked up and down the street. Perfect lawns. American flags fluttering exactly where Karen Blakely, the HOA president, said they were allowed. A few neighbors were power walking with their matching pastel visors. Nobody was watching me. Nobody was laughing from behind their perfectly trimmed hedges. But that prickle at the base of my neck, the same one I get when a ledger refuses to balance by a suspiciously round number, wouldn't go away. One token is coincidence. 2 identical custom-minted founder medallions in 2 completely different spots inside the same gated community within 48 hours is a pattern. By the weekend, the pattern had become a siege. Saturday, I was at the neighborhood garage sale on Cedar Court looking for cheap patio furniture. I tried on an old wicker chair and my hand slid into the cushion gap. My fingers closed around cold metal. I pulled it out. The lightning bolt stared back. I dropped the chair like it burned. The tag said estate of the late Mr. Reynolds. How did a token I found in my own mailbox end up sewn into a dead man's patio furniture 3 blocks away? I bought the chair anyway. Evidence. Monday morning, I was walking the community trail that loops behind the pool when something dug into my sneaker. I stopped, lifted my foot. Wedged into the rubber sole was the 4th token. I stood there on the manicured path, heart hammering, while Karen's recorded voice floated from the speaker posts, reminding everyone that grass height must remain between 2 and 2.5 inches for community harmony. This was not random. This was not some HOA prank. Someone knew my mailbox code, my parking habits, my walking route. Someone was telling me my entire life inside Sunnyvale Estates was transparent. I went straight home, locked the deadbolt, and lined the 4 tokens up on my kitchen island under the bright recessed lights. I photographed each one, front and back, zooming in on the engraving. I opened a new encrypted spreadsheet on my personal drive, not the company server. Location 1, community mailbox, Maple Lane. Location 2, driveway, my own parking spot. Location 3, garage sale, Cedar Court. Location 4. Community trail. Behind the pool. The locations were erratic, but every single one was on my daily routine. Whoever was doing this wasn't leading me somewhere new. They were proving they were already inside my world. I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like Karen's golf cart cruising past at midnight. Tuesday morning, the doorbell rang at 6:45 a.m. Delivery for Stella Hughes. Requires signature. The courier looked bored. He handed me a thick envelope stamped urgent in red. I signed, closed the door, and tore it open. The letterhead read, Sterling and Vance, HOA Legal Counsel. The first paragraph sucked the air out of my lungs. Dear MS. Hughes, it has come to our attention that you are in unauthorized possession of proprietary founder tokens belonging to the Sunnyvale Estates Community Trust. These items are tracked inventory and integral to the reserve fund charter. We demand immediate return of all such items. Failure to comply will result in civil action for misappropriation of community property and possible lien on your property. Hearth. The name tasted like ash. My mother's maiden name, Harthorn, had been surgically removed from every family story before I could spell it. No grandparents, no cousins, no holiday cards. Just me and Mom bouncing between apartments. Whenever I asked, she'd shut down. Your grandfather was cruel, cared more about his legacy than blood. We're better off without their money. I'd learned to treat the name like a swear word. And now the HOA lawyers representing the Sunnyvale Trust were threatening to lien my house over 4 pieces of metal I'd literally found on the ground. My phone rang. Mom. The timing was impossible. I'd opened the letter 30 seconds ago. Stella. Honey. She sang in that fake bright voice she used when the power was about to get cut. Just checking in. How's the new neighborhood treating you? I told her about the letter. Silence. Then the brightness dimmed. Oh, the lawyers. Listen, sweetheart, don't make this a big deal. It's just a misunderstanding. Your cousin Mason handles these things now. He's just being thorough. You know how men like that get about their collections. Cousin Mason. I had a cousin named Mason. Mom, they're threatening to lien my house. I found these weird tokens. I didn't steal anything. She cut me off soothingly. Just mail them back to the address on the letter. Please, Stella, don't fight them. You don't have the money for a legal war. Be a good girl and hand them over. Be a good girl. The phrase made my skin crawl. It was the same line she used when we couldn't afford new shoes or had to switch schools again. I hung up feeling colder than the tokens in my hand. She hadn't asked if I was scared. She'd only asked, implicitly, how many I had, and told me to surrender. The lightning bolt on the medallions wasn't just a design. It was a brand. The original developer Calvin Harthorn's mark from the 1980s when he built Sunnyvale Estates. I shoved the tokens and the letter into my purse and drove to work trying to pretend everything was normal. But the office atmosphere shifted the second I walked through the glass doors. Eyes lingered. Conversation stopped. A red flag email waited. High priority. HR. Urgent compliance review. I was escorted to conference room B where Karen, yes, the same HOA Karen Blakely, sat with a man in a suit that cost more than my car. She smiled the same sweet smile she used at the annual meeting when she fined Mrs. Alvarez for having the wrong shade of mulch. Stella, please sit, Karen cooed. We received an anonymous ethics hotline tip this morning. It alleges you're in possession of disputed community trust assets linked to the Founders Reserve Fund. I stared. That's insane. I found 4 medallions on the ground. This is a civil misunderstanding. The man slid a paper across the table. The report suggests you're leveraging your financial analyst position to move assets that don't belong to you. I slammed my hand down. I verify transactions. I don't move money. Who sent this? Karen's smile never wavered. Even the appearance of impropriety involving HOA funds is a liability. Dear, until you return the tokens and clear this up. We're placing you on administrative leave pending internal audit. I walked out suspended because I picked up 4 pieces of silver in my own neighborhood. Back at my desk, I opened the bottom drawer for my spare flats. It was ajar. I always closed it. Inside, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, lay the 5th token. Someone had walked past security, past the receptionist, and placed it there. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Count them carefully. Stella. I looked around the cubicles. None of it felt safe anymore. I was no longer the analyst. I was the data point. And someone was running a query on me I didn't understand. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 45 minutes gripping the wheel so hard my nails left crescents in the leather. They say you can't choose your family. But in my experience, family has no problem choosing exactly which role you'll play in their tragedy. Growing up, the script was clear. I was the difficult one. Mom loved telling friends raising me was a test of endurance. I asked too many questions. I was complicated. Mason Hardhorn, my cousin 3 years older, was the golden child. Prep school, lacrosse, effortless old money gloss. When he got a DUI, it was youthful indiscretion. When I got a parking ticket, Mom called it proof of my irresponsibility. Mason was the heir apparent to whatever scraps of the Hardhorn name still mattered. I was the cautionary tale. I pulled the 5th token from my pocket and held it to the dim garage light. The lightning bolt seemed to pulse. Mom had warned me, never mention your grandfather. He's cruel. He abandoned us. But memory is tricky. I remembered a rainy day when I was 7, digging through a box under Mom's bed. I found a black and white photo of a tall man on a dock. Pinky ring bearing the exact same lightning through circle mark. Mom dropped a jar of sauce, screamed, tore the photo to confetti. He's dead to us. Now, 27 years later, that same mark was costing me my job. I called Mom back. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked if I had 5 tokens yet. Mason says if you just hand them over, he can make the employment issue disappear. He can talk to your boss. I laughed a dry, humorless sound. How does Mason know I have 5? I found a 5th an hour ago. I haven't told anyone. She stammered. He has people keeping track. For your own safety. Stella, please, be a good girl. The dynamic snapped into focus. I wasn't a person to them. I was a vessel that had accidentally caught something valuable, and they were trying to shake it out of me. Mason was the operator. Mom the tool. Karen the public face of the HOA hammer. They didn't want to hurt me. They just wanted to break me enough to get the tokens back. But they'd made a critical miscalculation. They thought they were dealing with the emotional mess who cried when Mom yelled. They forgot that for 10 years, I'd been Stella the analyst. I put the car in gear. I didn't go to Mom's house. I went home, triple-locked the door, and opened a new folder on my laptop, Project Lightning. I logged every token, every call, every timestamp. I scanned the legal letter and highlighted the language. Proprietary assets, tracked inventory. They call them tokens, not coins. Tokens do something. They unlock. I started digging into Sunnyvale history. Calvin Hardhorn, founder, logistics magnate, extreme privacy since 2005. Old Tribune article showed the original community sign, lightning bolt through circle. The same mark. Mom said he cast us out. The article said he retreated, and now his mark was appearing in my mailbox. My car, my desk. I drove to a tiny numismatic shop in the Loop. The ancient owner, Arthur, examined the first token under his jeweler's loop. Not legal tender, not commemorative, utilitarian, meant to be handled, passed, fitted into slots. A marking token. Old families use them. Secret societies. Sometimes crime families. It's a key. Young lady. Just not the kind you put in a lock. He tilted it under the lamp. Look at the rim. Microscopic engraving. Alpha 7-4 Bravo Zulu. Serial number. Every token unique. Whoever made these is tracking them. if you found this. It wasn't an accident. It was deployed. I paid him $50 cash and left with a new kind of dread. Back in my car, I photographed the rims of all 5. I typed the serials into my spreadsheet. Sorted by date found. First letters, AOPN. Open. The 6th token I found later, the neighborhood bodega, spelled THEBOX on its rim. Open the box. Not a threat. Instructions. Someone, the person minting these, was telling me to go forward. Karen and Mason thought they were sending warnings to stop. But the real sender was testing me. I changed my routine. If they were relying on my predictability, I'd break it. I walked 4 miles home instead of driving, zigzagging through alleys, stopping at a bodega I'd never entered. The bored teenager slapped change into my palm. 3 quarters, 1 nickel, and 1 dime that wasn't a dime. Lightning bolt. 6th token. I ran out, chest heaving. How? I'd chosen the store randomly 30 seconds earlier. Unless the entire neighborhood was in on it. Or unless I was being followed in real time. The distribution network was vast. They were handing these to people I was about to interact with. They weren't just watching. They were curating my reality. My phone buzzed. An email from Larkwell HR. Further documentation suggests the collectibles are being used for unregistered capital transfer. Written statement required by 9 a.m. tomorrow. The language was identical to the HOA legal letter. Mason wasn't just influencing HR. He was dictating. He wanted me to feel the walls closing from every side. Family. Job. HOA fines stacking up on my door like parking tickets on a Ferrari. I went for a run to burn off the cortisol. When I returned, the apartment felt wrong. Rug shifted 2 inches. Mail stacked perfectly aligned. I always tossed it messy. Bedroom drawer that I left cracked for humidity was shut tight. Inside the jewelry box, for tokens instead of 5. They'd taken 1. Not a robbery. A message. We can get in. We can touch your things. You're not safe. I marched downstairs and demanded security logs from the building manager. After threats of police and bad Yelp reviews, he let me see the footage. 7:42 p.m., a man in a bespoke charcoal suit used a key and strolled into my unit like he owned it. The key belonged to a guest set given to my mother months ago. Mason. I saved the footage. Evidence. Mom called again, sobbing. The lawyers had to freeze your accounts because you were planning to run. Just give them back. Why are you tearing this family apart? I asked her point blank what the lightning mark meant. The sobbing stopped like a switch. What? She whispered, suddenly dry and alert. She knew. She was terrified. You know, it's not just a logo, I said. You know, it's a key. And by helping Mason and Karen, you're trying to steal it. She hissed. You're sick, Stella, and hung up. I saved the call log. Evidence item. Dana displays knowledge of the mark. Reaction indicates complicity. The next attack came via email from work. Unreported gift acceptance. Luxury watch and cash envelope from a vendor. Ide mit Elliot. My lawyer contact. At a coffee shop for a legitimate case discussion. Mason had spun it into bribery. I demanded proof. Camera footage. Vendor name. They had none. I sent a formal denial and copied legal. Then a fake email from my boss, Marston, luring me to a 10 a.m. meeting that didn't exist. I checked the domain, spoofed with capital I's instead of L's. I showed up at the real 2 p.m. audit committee meeting instead. I laid out the timeline, the spoofed emails, the harassment. I threatened RICO if they fired me. The board suspended the review and started investigating the source. Mason had just made a powerful enemy. That evening, my neighbor, Mrs. Pike, Sweet Lorraine, caught me in the lobby. That man in the fancy suit. Mason, he was back. Took pictures of your door lock. Asked what time you usually come home. She agreed to sign a statement. Witness for stalking. The discovery packet from the HOA lawyers arrived. Exhibit A, Photo of one of my tokens in my drawer. But the floral contact paper lining was visible, the exact pattern I bought at Dollar General 3 years ago. Mason had submitted proof of his own burglary. Elliot laughed on the phone. He thought he was proving you had the loot. He forgot the method was a felony. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and fear. Small hearing room, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. On the other side sat Mason's legal team, sharks in three-piece suits. Mason himself was absent, too important for a preliminary asset recovery motion. He'd sent his dogs. I sat next to Elliot, hands folded, cold clarity humming in my veins. All rise. Judge Vance looked tired but fair. Sunnyvale Estates, HOA Trust versus Hughes. Plaintiff's emergency motion to freeze assets and compel turnover of founder tokens. Sterling, the lead lawyer, stood. Simple misappropriation, Your Honor. MS. Hughes refuses to return proprietary inventory despite repeated requests. We have reason to believe she intends to dissipate the assets. She's a disgruntled former family member who feels entitled. Elliot stood. No smile. Your Honor, the plaintiff's entire case rests on one piece of evidence, Exhibit A, the photograph proving MS. Hughes possesses the token. He placed documents on the bench. High-resolution print of the photo. Note the floral shelf liner. Receipt from Dollar General dated 3 years ago for that exact pattern. And sworn affidavit plus electronic keycard logs showing Mason Hardhorn accessed MS. Hughes's unit at 7:42 p.m. on the exact date the photo was allegedly taken. Video footage shows him entering. MS. Hughes was on the community trail. The plaintiff is asking this court to punish my client using evidence obtained through felony burglary. Judge Vance's expression shifted from bored to furious. Mr. Sterling, did your client break into the defendant's home to obtain this evidence? Sterling stuttered. The gavel slammed. Motion to freeze denied. Temporary restraining order lifted. Cross motion granted. Mason Hardhorn is ordered to stay 500 yards from MS. Hughes, her home, and her workplace. Evidence of the break-in referred to the district attorney. Court is adjourned. We walked out. My knees weak with relief. Elliot grinned. We survived the first wave. But while prepping last night, I found something bigger. At the diner, he spread photocopies of the original community charter addendum. Clause 19. Activation by token. The identity of the primary custodian shall not be determined by bloodline alone, but by presentation of the imperial founder tokens to the bearer of the mark. Possession combined with biometric verification serves as the sole key to unlock the corpus. The tokens aren't money, Elliot said. They're votes. They're keys. The HOA charter was set up leaderless until someone collected the tokens and presented them to the custodian. Mason isn't the beneficiary. The charter doesn't care about blood. It cares about who holds the tokens and bears the mark. That's why he's terrified. You're not stealing his money. Stella, you're stealing his crown. My phone buzzed. Real email from my boss. Forensic analysis traced the spoofed emails to Apex Ventures, Mason's firm. Bribery allegation disproven. Access restored. Larkwell was filing cease and desist. Mason had poked the fintech bear. Then a cream envelope arrived at Elliot's office. No return address. Inside, a single card in shaky handwriting. You have proven a sufficient shield. Now bring her to the annual HOA meeting. Community Clubhouse. Noon tomorrow. The charter does not wait for passengers afraid to board. Signed. C. Hardhorn. Calvin. He was calling me in. Elliot and I arrived at the clubhouse at 11:55. The great hall was packed with residents. Karen stood at the podium in her pastel power suit, clipboard in hand, smiling that sweet smile while listing new fines for non-compliant flag etiquette. Mason sat in the front row, arms crossed. I scanned the crowd. Then I saw the cane. An old man in a charcoal wool coat sat alone at the back. Flat cap low. Stillness radiated from him like a vacuum. Calvin Hardhorn. He looked like a retiree, but the space around him stayed empty. I walked up. He didn't look up immediately. When he did, his pale gray eyes scanned me like a balance sheet. "You're late," he said quietly. 34 years late. I told him I came because of the tokens. I opened the box, meaning I followed the serial numbers to the charter. He studied my face. "You count the stairs when you're anxious," he said. "You counted to 1,000 on the bottom step of that Walnut Avenue apartment, so the yelling would stop. Nobody knew that. Not even Mom." He pulled his left hand from his pocket. On his pinky, the heavy silver ring with the lightning bolt through the circle. "I am Calvin Hardhorn, and I placed you, Stella. Not abandoned. Placed. If I'd brought you into the house, Mason would have eaten you alive before you were 10. I let the world toughen your skin. And it worked. You found the anomaly. You decoded the cipher. You opened the box. Mason spotted us and strode over, flanked by security. "Grandfather, I'll escort you home. It's dangerous for a man your age to be with questionable company." Calvin stood slowly. When he straightened, he seemed 6 inches taller. "You speak of bloodlines," he told Mason. "You think the mark is a logo to stamp on stationery. Stella knows they're mirrors." He raised his right hand, the one he'd kept hidden. "Turn it over. Open the palm." A jagged silvery scar cut diagonally across his lifeline, bisecting a circular burn mark in the center. The exact lightning bolt through the circle. "The mark is not decoration," Calvin said, voice carrying across the hall. "It is the seal of the custodian. The charter states the assets can only be unlocked by presentation of the tokens to the bearer of the mark, not the bearer of the name." Mason's face drained of color. "We had an agreement," he shouted. "I managed the firm for 5 years. Calvin's voice hardened. "You falsified reports. You used legal funds to silence mistresses. You dropped the weight every time it got heavy." Stella kept climbing, even when the stairs were on fire. He turned to me. "The tokens were the final stress test. I needed to know if, when your mother begged, and Mason threatened, and Karen fined you into oblivion, you would fold. You didn't. You fought. The charter is yours now." Calvin signed the single-page beneficiary designation Elliot had prepared right there in the clubhouse. "Stella Hughes is hereby designated sole active custodian of the Sunnyvale Estates Community Trust. All prior powers of attorney to Mason Hardhorn and Karen Blakely are revoked." The lawyers read the signature and quietly stepped away from Mason. They knew a dead asset when they saw one. Mason lunged. "This is fraud." Elliot blocked him. "Touch the document, and I add witness tampering to the burglary charges." Karen's face at the podium turned purple. She tried to gavel the meeting back to order, but residents were already whispering. "Phone's out." Calvin raised his voice, silencing the room. "Greed is demanding what does not belong to you. Justice is keeping what you have earned." He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Mason, you have nothing left to claim. Go home." Mason screamed at the crowd. "She's a thief. She swindled a senile old man." Calvin's voice echoed off the rafters. "The only thief here is the one who broke into a resident's home to fabricate evidence and the president who used anonymous tips to destroy a neighbor's livelihood." He nodded at the board table. "Effective immediately. The board is dissolved pending new election. Karen Blakely and Mason Hardhorn are removed for cause. Any further interference and the full weight of the trust will be used to disbar and prosecute." The gavel, Karen's own, clattered to the floor as she realized her microphone was still live. The entire neighborhood heard her shriek. "This is my community." Residents who had nodded along to her ridiculous rules for years started filming. Someone yelled, "How many flags do you have in your yard?" "Karen?" 10. "While the rest of us get fined for one." Laughter rippled. Dark, satisfying laughter. That afternoon, we stood before Judge Vance again. Elliot laid out the indictment. Campaign of harassment, cyberstalking, felony burglary, perjury. Calvin's sworn affidavit confirming me as rightful custodian. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Plaintiff's case dismissed with prejudice. Countersuit for legal fees and damages granted. Permanent restraining order issued. Evidence of break-in referred to the district attorney. Court adjourned. I walked out into the late afternoon sun. The air felt clean. Elliot shook my hand. You're going to be busy auditing the reserve fund. Take your time, but know you've got a desk and a neighborhood waiting. Calvin waited by the curb beside a black sedan. He handed me one last gray envelope sealed with red wax. Cleanup. Names of everyone who borrowed from the trust. Everyone who used the name to leverage power, including your mother. She was on a stipend. $5,000 a month to keep you away from me. You decide who stays on the payroll. Cut them off. Evict them. Sue them. Or forgive them. The ledger is yours now. I took the envelope. I thought about calling Mom and hearing her panic when the check stopped. I thought about Mason in a cell, but I slipped the envelope into my purse. Tomorrow I would deal with them like an analyst, cold, efficient, emotionless. Tonight, I was going home, ordering dinner, deleting the spreadsheet. I looked up at the sky. The sun was setting. Long shadows across perfectly manicured lawns that no longer felt like a prison. The lightning had struck. The storm was over, and I was still standing. I choose my family, I whispered to the empty street. And I choose me. I turned toward my house, fingers tight around the last token in my pocket, ready to pay my own way.